You're thinking about moving to Japan, either now or sometime in the near future. Should you do it? Yes, or at least in my opinion. Moving abroad is just one of those experiences. One of the most valuable things that I think that you could possibly do. I'm a huge proponent of it, so if it's something you're even a little bit thinking about, then I think that you should absolutely go for it. Worst case scenario, you go back home. Now we have that out of the way, you're going, but how do you do it? So that's where it gets a little bit complicated, because this really depends on you and your experience and where you are in life right now, because so many things can affect this, such as how old you are, what kind of experience you have, whether you have a degree. These all factor into what kind of visa you could potentially be eligible for and what you can apply for. So I'm going to go through all of it. We're going to look at the visa types, who's eligible, what you need to do to be eligible, kind of the whole process of applying, getting your certificate of eligibility, all that kind of thing, looking at how to get a job, looking at how to apply for school, looking at how to find somewhere to live, get a phone plan, just kind of everything, the whole experience. So this is all just based off of my own experience as well and my own research. So I moved to Japan about 4.5 years ago, and I've been living here ever since. So I've met a lot of different people who've come here in different ways, so I'm going to kind of leverage that experience. But as a disclaimer, I am not a lawyer, so I'm going to go through all of the visa types and kind of my opinions and some other resources for you down below, but it's not legal advice, so I'm just throwing that out there right at the beginning. Please always double check, things do always change, but this is kind of my overview. So now that that's over with, let's get into it. Step 1, choosing your visa type. If you already know about visas and you just want to move to the certificate of eligibility part or the actually moving to Japan part, please check the timestamps below, because I don't want to waste your time and this is going to be long. But otherwise, let's get into it. There are 3 main directions that you're probably thinking if you want to move to Japan and you don't have any kind of special circumstance. So that would be the student visa, the working holiday visa, or a work visa, and then they have some kind of subcategories underneath of those. So I'm going to go through all of them in as much detail as I can. So let's do student first. So you have kind of 2 main directions that you can go. You can either go the higher education route, which is like university or a college, or you can go the language school route. There is kind of a third option if you want to study something that is really specific to Japanese culture. Like, for example, you want to do like Japanese flower arrangement or something like this. Then you can actually come on the cultural activities visa. This one is a bit different though, because you generally can't work on this visa. So it's a bit more difficult to come for any kind of long-term situation, but I'm going to link that information to that one just down below so you can check that out. But otherwise, let's go back to the student one. So if you are going to go to a higher education, this is like your university degree, you're getting your master's or maybe a diploma, something like this, or your whatever kind of degree you want, and you can essentially stay for as long as you're in school. So if you are doing a 4-year program, then you can stay for those 4 years. If you want to do your master's after, then you can just apply again and you can get for your master's. So this one is more flexible on the amount of time, because you can renew it if you're going to keep studying higher education. If you want to do the language school one though, then this is a maximum of 2 years. So you don't get to just keep extending this even if you're not N1 or N2 yet. That's kind of all the time that you get. So study your best while you're here and make the most of it. But that's also not the only restriction. So you have to attend at least 80% of your classes. Otherwise you can risk not getting your visa extended for that 2nd year, or maybe just losing it entirely. But basically you have to go for at least 80%. So you can't just come, get the visa, pay for school, but then not go. And though I do recommend going as someone who's still paying the student loans for that degree. Go to the classes, make it worth it. But other than that, you can get a visa to go to school for either of these situations. And then once you're here, you can also work for a bit. So you can't work full time, but you can work up to 28 hours per week, which is quite a bit. So you can, to an extent, support yourself on that. I would still recommend having some extra funds, but you aren't going to come here and be totally screwed on that aspect. But you still do need to come with some money. So the student visa, I would say that like the hardest part about getting this one is that you need to have access in your bank account, like you need to prove this, of at least 2.5 million yen. So This is quite a lot of money. This is somewhere around 15,000 and 16,000 American dollars or similar amount of euros. I don't know exactly right now. I'll put the actual exchange rate somewhere around here because I don't like to look at it because the yen is really bad right now, which sucks if you make yen, but if you're you guys, it's one of the best times to come to school in Japan right now because the yen is really low, but it's still a lot of money. So if you don't have that, then you can get someone to guarantee you, but that needs to be an immediate family member. So think like brother or sister or a parent, and that's going to need to be notarized legally, and then they need to prove that they have that much money that they can essentially guarantee you or support you with in case you need it, which is a lot. So also if they don't have it, then you can also use scholarships or loans or bursaries or something like this in order to prove that you will have that amount coming in, and then that also counts. But that's really, if you're going to do a scholarship or student loan or something like that, you can't really do that for language school. So for language school, you really just do need to have the money. So it's pretty prohibited for a lot of people. So if you aren't able to do that, then there are still ways to get here, whether you have a degree already or not. So the next one that we can look at is the working holiday visa. So the working holiday visa is awesome. It is one of the best ways to kind of short-term travel to different countries if you are eligible for it. So I never did it for Japan, but I did it for Australia, and it was awesome. It was such a good experience. I highly recommend it if you're able to do it. So I'm going to link the list of countries that are eligible down below. But basically, if your country has an agreement with Japan, then you can come here for 6 months to a year, and some of them are 6 months renewable. I believe that Canada is like that. Like you can stay for a year, but after 6 months, you have to kind of like reapply for the extension, but you don't have to leave the country for that part. But anyways, so all the countries that can do that are down below, and the age is kind of different for countries too. So you need to be under 25 for some countries, under 26 for some countries, and under 30 for some countries. So make sure that you actually check your exact country's requirement, not just trying to look at some general requirements, because some people think it's 30 for everywhere, but for example, for Canada, it's not. I think you need to be under 25. So this one is a bit more difficult because if you don't have an agreement or you're too old, then you just kind of can't go. But otherwise, it's a really good one, and all you have to do is apply. It's pretty quick. It's sort of a lottery system, so if your country has way too many people who apply, you might not get it, so you might have to just try again the next year. I think generally people do get it. When I got it for Australia, I just applied and I got it immediately. It was super easy, and then once you kind of get the visa, then you can just come. The requirements for this one are, other than being from the country and being the right age, is there is a monetary requirement, but it's pretty low. It changes depending on the country, so again, check your exact country, but it's somewhere around 4,000 or 5,000 American dollars, which actually I would recommend coming with more than that. So it really is a bare minimum. If you want to see my whole recommendation for how much money you need to move to Japan, then I'm linking an article that I wrote below that goes through all of the costs, but basically I recommend that you have somewhere around 10 million Japanese yen if you want to come. So the working holiday is a really good option if you are eligible for it, and you don't need a degree, and once you can apply, then you're kind of good to go. So the only issue with this one is it's not renewable. So if you do get a job and then you want to keep working at that job, you can't just stay in the country and change it to a work visa. You have to leave the country to change your visa. So for a lot of people, it's just a good excuse to go to Korea for 2 weeks, but that is something to keep in mind. It's not extendable or long-term after the end of the visa. So lastly, we have the working visa. So this is kind of the ultimate. If you want to stay long-term, you're going to need a work visa eventually. Even if you go to school first, then you're going to need to qualify for one of these after. So it's good to think about these if you do want to stay long-term, because you're going to have to prepare for them in some sort of way so that you can change your visa eventually. So there's kind of two main types. First, I'm going to start with a newer one that is a bit controversial. So this is the skilled worker visa type 1 and 2. So why this one is controversial is because it came out kind of recently in like 2019. I'm going to link down to it below if you want to get more information, but it had a bit of a reputation for having workers that were getting taken advantage of, so definitely do your due diligence. They're trying to fix this, but it's still a little shady. So basically, it is to help fill roles that are in a shortage here. So if you are going to work in, for example, like agriculture or food and beverage manufacturing, I believe nursing is on here for at least type 1, then you can come for initially 5 years. If you are type 1, then you can only come for 5 years and you can't bring any dependents. But if you get type 2, then you can bring dependents and it is renewable and you can just keep staying. So if you want to work in one of these special industries, and they're adding to it all the time what industries are available, then you can come on this skilled worker visa. You still do need to be sponsored, and then you need to also pass a skills test in the field that you want to work in, and you need at least JLPT N4. So there are some requirements, but it is kind of an interesting one. It could be an option for you, so if you do want to look into it, I would get more information in the link below. Otherwise, there is kind of the catch-all visa. So this one is the like skilled worker, international services, humanities, engineering, something like that. It's a very long name, but it's the catch-all. So this is the one that, like, if you're teaching English, if you're an engineer, if you're in IT, if you're in marketing, if you're a manager or whatever, this is the visa that you probably have. You do need a degree. It can be in anything, but it has to be a 4-year degree. And then you need a company to sponsor you. So you need to get a job first, and then the company will apply for you, sponsor you, and then if that is approved, then you get to come to Japan. So this is the one that I have. You can just keep renewing it kind of forever. It comes in as low as 3 months, but the only people I know who've gotten that are for doing something like modeling or something. If you get like English teaching, for example, it's probably going to be a year, and it can be as long as 5 years. Every time you renew it, it's, you know, you could get a 5-year off the bat, but I think most people get 1 or 3 years, and then maybe you'll get longer as it goes. Honestly, I know some people have gotten a 1 year just every year, like forever. I think it just depends on the immigration officer and how they feel that day. This one, you can renew it essentially forever as long as you're employed, so this is a really good option, but you need a job. So let's move along past all the visa stuff. Whew, that was like super long. I hope I didn't lose you guys there. If you have some questions about it, please check out the links below. Let's go to the next step. How do you find a job? How easy it is to get a job really depends on what you do. So if you're an engineer or an IT professional, for example, you can probably get a job from out of the country. Just like apply, check LinkedIn. There's this email that I used to subscribe to that was like a developers in Japan. They send jobs kind of every week, so I'll link that also down below. Yeah, you can probably find something, and you might not need Japanese. Otherwise, if you don't speak Japanese to at least JLPT N2 level, it's going to be really difficult to get a job from outside of Japan that is not English teaching. I know a lot of people don't want to teach English, and they want to come and they just want to get a job and they want to speak English, but honestly it's really difficult. If you have significant experience in your field, it might be something that you can do, but most people I think are going to need to either get JLPT N2, and even then it's kind of difficult because they want to hire people who are already here, or else at least start teaching English. If you do want to do that, you don't have to stay an English teacher. So that's the thing. Honestly, teaching English can be kind of fun. I taught English for almost 2 years before moving into a job in my field, and it was fun. Like, you can move to where you want to go as long as you are a native English speaker. It's pretty easy to get a job in like Tokyo or Osaka. You don't have to go to the middle of nowhere. You can do JET, but JET, they're probably going to send you to the middle of nowhere, so I don't necessarily recommend it. But then once you're here, you can move to a job that's in your field. If you're not a native English speaker, then things can become a little bit more difficult, because if you're not an IT person or an engineer and you don't natively speak English, then your options do kind of dwindle a little bit, because it's actually quite difficult to get an English teaching job from outside of the country if you're not a native English speaker. Once you're already here, you can get a job teaching English as long as your English is kind of good enough, but you might have to go to the countryside a little bit more depending on how good your English is or what kind of accent you have. But if teaching English is not your jam either way, then get studying Japanese and hopefully you can make it over. Another good way to do it is through translation. Some translation companies, if you're going to even just like manage the translation, not do the translation, then Japanese is not always necessary. So look for certain industries, check out LinkedIn. I don't really recommend any of the like Gaijin Pod or jobs in Japan. Like, they pretty much only post English teaching jobs, and any kind of other job, I feel like you don't get any answers. I've got all my jobs on LinkedIn, so I recommend LinkedIn. Check it out, make a profile. A lot of international companies, that's where they are. So give it your best shot. That would be my recommendation for finding a job. So after you're sponsored, you're getting a visa. The next step, I guess, I don't know, step 2 or 3 we're on now, is the certificate of eligibility. So whoever's sponsoring you, whether it's a company or a school, whichever it is, they are going to apply for a certificate of eligibility for you. This is kind of the part that takes the longest. People say it takes 1 to 3 months. Mine took 6 months, so I don't know, like, it could be really anywhere. I don't know anyone else who's took that long, but there was no problem, so don't panic if yours is long, but should take a couple months. And then once you have that, they're going to mail that to you, and then you are going to take your certificate of eligibility to a Japanese consulate in your own country and bring your passport and all that, and then they can kind of change it into a visa. I think that this step for me only took like a week, maybe 10 days, and then yeah, then you get your passport back, you have the visa in there, and you are good to go. So I think I left immediately, but I would recommend leaving some space because you don't know how long it's going to take, but you're basically allowed to come to the country after that. So you show up, you get your residence card. You don't have to worry about that until you arrive. When you do get there and immigration kind of checks your visa, they're going to print you your card, and then this is essentially your visa moving forward. Every time you renew after that, you don't have to get a new visa in your passport, you will just get a new residence card. And then this basically means you're allowed to stay in the country. So congratulations, it's step 3, but it's like the biggest step. Now you're here. So once you're in Japan, what do you do? So step 3 or 4, depending on how that counting went, is setting up your life in Japan. Once you arrive, you're going to need a place to stay, you're gonna need a phone number, and you're gonna need a bank account. So these are kind of your 3 main things. The problem is that in order to find a place to stay, you usually need a phone number and a bank account, but in order to open a bank account, you usually need the address, like your permanent address written on the back of your residence card, and you need a phone number. But then in order to get a phone number, to start that contract, you need a bank account. So it's, you know, it's kind of a problem. So what I recommend doing is, because you're gonna wanna see where you live kind of before you move in, so I recommend finding a place once you get here, because the leases are 2 years long and it is very expensive to move. So be kind of careful about that. But you can still put a temporary place that you're living on the back of your residence card. So get an Airbnb or something like this, hostel, whatever, for maybe a month or 2, and you are going to choose this as your permanent address for at least for now, to put on the back of your residence card so the government knows where you are. And then we can go get a phone number. Most of the time, to get the phone number, you need a bank account. Otherwise, you can't start the contract, right? But you can't get the bank account without the phone number. So you need to go to GTN Mobile. I don't know if they still will do this, but I went there, and this is not sponsored at all. If they want to sponsor me, that would be great. But I just genuinely like this company. They're in Shinokubo, so if you are in Tokyo, then you can just go really easy up to Koreatown. And they let me make a contract without having a bank account. So I just had to, once I got the bank, like update them really quickly, and then that seemed to be good enough. So maybe just ask, see if you can do it. But they have language support in like all different kinds of languages. They have English, they have Thai, Chinese, lots of options, so they should be able to help you. And then on top of that, they can also down the line help you get a credit card, and they can also help you find a house. So if you go there, they're actually also like real estate agents. So you can ask them for a phone, and you can also ask them to help you find a permanent place to stay. And this is really handy because a lot of places are just not going to let you live there because they don't want foreigners to live there. And it's very common. It's gonna happen. So it's easier if you just go to a real estate agent who is used to helping foreigners, because then they're gonna show you the properties that you can actually have. So other popular ones are like Leo Palace or something. Honestly, like Leo Palace gets some kind of slack, but I don't think they're that bad. Honestly, I live in a Leo Palace place. It's been like 3.5 years. Honestly, I was only gonna move here for a short amount of time and then move on, but like, it's fine. Is it my dream home? No. Is it good enough? Yes. And it's easy. So use something like that. Don't make it harder on yourself than you need to. And then you can be able to also find your place to live. After that, you are going to need a bank account. So head on over to one of the banks. I recommend either like JP Post or like SMBC or something are known for being relatively foreigner friendly. I don't necessarily recommend somewhere like Mizuho or something. I deal with them, and it is nothing is friendly. Well, they're choose like SMBC or something. Save yourself the hassle. And you're going to need, at this point, you're going to need everything. You're going to need your address on the back of your residence card, and you're going to need the phone number. So make sure that you bring all that, bring your passport, bring everything. Expect it to take like 2 or 3 hours. And then you should be able to get at least a cash card and an account. The cash card, mind you, is not a debit card, so you can't pay with it, but you can take cash out of the ATM. And then you'll also get like your bank book, and you can use that to take cash out as well. If you want to have something that you can pay with, you're probably going to need to get a credit card, and then I recommend applying for it through GTN, probably not through your bank, because your bank is probably going to reject you. So that would be all that's the whole cycle. So then after that, you have your bank account, you have your phone number, and you have a place to live, and you made it. You're here. It's probably been 1 or 2 months at this point. You hopefully have a job, you're settled in, you're making friends, and that's it. Like, congratulations. It's hard to move to a new country. It can be really scary, but it can be so worth it. So at this point, I hope that you're having a good time. I hope you're exploring your new city, learning some Japanese, meeting some new people. And if you're not, don't worry about it. It can be a big kind of lonely place to move somewhere new, but it can also be the best opportunity to meet people. Like, just go to events, find a hobby that you like, and try to find other people who are doing that hobby. Japan, I feel like everyone has a hobby. It's kind of awesome. So you should be able to meet people who are into the same kind of things that you are, and eventually you're gonna have a new life here and it's gonna be awesome. So I also have some other guides and tips that you guys can check out, so I'm gonna link those below. One of them is, for example, like what neighborhood I recommend to live in Tokyo. I have a whole article on that, like where you should best be. I also have, again, the article that explains how much money I think you need to move here. I also have an article that just kind of generally quickly goes through as well, like how to move to Japan this year. And then, of course, if you did like this video, please like and subscribe, click the bell, all that jazz, leave a comment. I'm gonna check all of them. My name is Kirsty, and I'm relatively new to YouTube, so it would mean a lot. And hopefully I can continue being on here and sharing things about what it's like to move to another country, what it's like to live in Japan, what it's like to work and travel from here. And I want to share those with you guys, and also hopefully hear some of your experiences as well. So until next time, see you guys.